Good afternoon, guys. In fact, it'll be afternoon when you guys see this, or maybe you're not seeing this today, maybe you're seeing this from somewhere else in the world. But anyway, guys, it's afternoon. It'll be afternoon when this drops in the UK, but it's still morning now. Anyway, me waffling. So I've just got off the phone with my friend who's out in Ukraine. He works a large NGO, and he gives me a lot of information that's not relevant to anyone else. He gives it me, he gives it me ad hoc. I don't always get it. Sometimes he's out of signal. But what he said, you won't see this. I've looked all over the news, and you're not seeing this information anywhere else, guys. So let's just put the context of what's been happening, like the last, I want to say 20 or 24, but we'll say 48 hours. You know, we've got the US military, announcing the draft or the selective service, however it is. I did a video with it earlier. You know, this includes migrants and undocumented citizens. I don't know how that works in the United States, but apparently it's a thing. You know, we've got the struggle for F-16 pilots to operate in Ukraine. I said that I think that this is going to be, the Ukrainian Foreign Legion is going to expand its scope into fighter pilots, and they're going to be the ones who are going to be flying the F-16s. We've got the 500,000 people amnesty that Joe Biden's just announced in the United States. And all of this, we've got an election in the UK on the 4th of July. Guys, things are going to get wild, absolutely. But don't worry, I'm going to be telling you what's happening next so you guys can get ready. So, like I said, guys, I just spoke to my friend. He's out in Ukraine at the moment. He works for a large NGO, and he gives me a lot of good information. So I spoke to him, and he said that there's a large amount of Russian troops assembling north of Kharkiv. Videos and videos ago, when the second front opened in Ukraine, and the Russians started coming down from the north. You know, everybody was saying, there was people on mainstream media, these generals and these colonels, and they were saying, yes, I don't know why Putin is doing this. The reality is he wants to encircle Kharkiv. So that's the Russian main intent at the moment. They want to encircle Kharkiv. They can't take Kharkiv. It's too big. There's too many people. There's too many weapons. There's too much administration to go on into taking it. So what they're going to do, they'll just encircle it, cut it off, and then they just tell people, right, behave or we'll turn your electricity off. People don't behave, they get their electricity turned off, they get the gas turned off, they get the water turned off, and guess what? People behave, then they get the utilities turned back on. That's how you deal with the city, guys, all right? You don't go into it, you don't invest tanks, you don't invest troops, you don't invest anything into the city, you encircle it and turn their utilities off. It's that simple, all right? Anyway, so that's what's happening at the moment. Also, the Russians are pushing hard in and around the Donetsk area. So what does this mean? You know, whenever you see large forces coming together, tanks, trucks, logistics, medical supplies, there's a cost to all of this. Now, I don't just mean financial, which, it is a thing. So you've got to look at money. It costs stuff it costs money to get that stuff places. It costs time. Remember, the Russians are fighting a war, and for them to invest their time to move these troops around, they do it for a reason, and it costs manpower. So the troops that they're putting north of Kharkiv, they're going to use them for a reason, because, the troops are in short supply everywhere, but the reason they're putting them there at this time is because I feel there's going to be another push into Kharkiv. Now, you don't do this for nothing. Remember back in 2022 when, there was like 100,000 troops on the Ukrainian border, and, Putin was coming out and he's saying things like, no, they're just exercising troops. Don't worry. Do not worry. I am just exercising troops. It's no problem. And then, obviously, in February, he got caught out as he was lying because they weren't. Well, Vladimir Putin, he's very good at his words. He's very good at communicating. So he can say, yes, the exercise was until middle of February, and then it was deployment. So while he can say things and they're kind of true, you've got to unpack what he's saying, and everything that everything that they're saying, you've got to look at it and think, right, could there be another explanation? Again, the perfect example is on the invasion of, the annexation of Crimea in, 2014, 2013. The people were asking him, Vladimir Putin, do you have any troops in when it was absolutely insane. There was a load of trucks, a load of military just turned up in Crimea, and people were wondering where they were from. It was obvious where they were from. But Vladimir Putin, when he was asked on this question, he said, I have no regular forces in Crimea. Obviously, these guys are special forces. Now, the person who asked him that question should have said, well, do you have any forces in Crimea? Do you have any private military companies in Crimea? Are these people who've got off the, who have got off the Russian military trucks, wearing Russian military uniform with Russian military weapons, are they anything to do with Russia? But you had the whole Western media going, oh, right, yeah, they're not Russian. Absolutely insane, guys. Okay, we've got to look at the situation. Now, so quickly, guys, the recap, 2022, Russia was moving all these troops, saying they were an exercise, then there was the big invasion. Now, look at context, just, as a side note, look at the context of exercise Steadfast Defender. Now, if we're, NATO countries are having this big exercise, I think it may have even be coming to an end now. Steadfast Defender in Poland, in the Baltic regions. Remember what the Russians said? No, they are just exercising troops. Now, for the Russian perspective, when somebody says, we are just exercising troops, that kind of, in their head, that means that this is the precursor for an invasion. Maybe it is, guys, maybe it isn't, we don't know. But the reality is that the reality doesn't matter, it's always the perception. So that's what's happening in Ukraine at the moment, guys. I feel this could happen any day now. There could be another big push north of Kharkiv. Otherwise, why are they gathering that many troops there? Remember, the Ukrainians have the authority now to use NATO weapons to strike into Russia. So for the Russians to gather troops north of Kharkiv, this must mean they're going to do it for a reason, because as soon as they appear, these formations, they're going to be a target. So when they appear, they must be pushed forwards quickly. This is from my friend out on the ground. We'll see this potentially happen in the next couple of days. Guys, North Korea. Vladimir Putin's been to North Korea. What's happened? Well, I'll read you something in a minute, but the North Koreans, Kim Jong-il? No, that's his dad. Kim Jong-un, he's come out, guys. Kim Jong-un, he has got fantastic hair. You've got to admire that hair. But he's come out and he is giving full support and solidarity to Vladimir Putin now, guys. All right, so let me just quickly read a little bit from here. Where are we? Here we are, guys. So the Russian leader is on his first visit to North Korea in 24 years. I don't think he was... Yeah, he came in 2000, didn't he? Yeah, the Russian leader is on his first visit to North Korea in 24 years, with relations between the two countries growing closer since Moscow began its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The rising concern is that North Korea is providing Russia with weapons in return for Russian technology and technological expertise. So technological expertise in what? What are they talking about here? I will speculate that the Russians are providing them technological expertise in nuclear weapons because they want to be a nuclear superpower. What I would also say with this, and nobody's talking about this, is the space context, because, the delegation that's gone with Vladimir Putin have a lot of experience in the space industry in that sort of area. And again, I mentioned this in my video yesterday. I don't think the threat from space comes from space nukes. It comes from ground-based lasers. Now, I was thinking one of the only things in space that the West, NATO has, that if you want to call it the BRICS nations, let's call it East and West. The only thing the West has in space that the East doesn't is Elon Musk's Starlink. Now, you know, people are, say what you want about Starlink. The reality is it is a military system, all right? There's no way that he got authority to launch, like, what is it, 3,000 satellites or something without the military's thumbs up. And if the military are giving you the thumbs up, that means they want something in return. So, you know, the Starlink system, although on the face of it, it's a civilian, it's a civilian system. What other functions do those satellites, what other functions do they, do those satellites do? And the East, they don't have anything to compare that with. So I'm thinking that they're looking at potential options for this. Maybe they're looking at, the North Koreans targeting the Starlink satellites with ground-based lasers. Because remember, it's very cheap. A ground-based laser is very cheap. It's a lot cheaper than launching a satellite. It's a lot cheaper than firing a missile, and you can do it constantly. There's no question marks really. And when you're firing a laser at a drone, for example, and the drone's moving around, it's very difficult to, hang on, let me do it that way. It's very difficult to aim your laser at that drone. But if you're aiming it at a satellite that's in a known orbit at a known speed, it's very easy. It's really easy to do. And over time, you can degrade these satellites. So I think we're going to see something like that in the future. We're going to see satellites starting to fall out the sky. Also, guys, I read something today. It was very, very dark. I'm not going to repeat it here because there's certain things you can't say on this platform. But go check it out yourself, guys. Just search Telegraph Ukraine, and you'll see what I mean, guys. All right. I hope that this is not real, and I hope that this article, you'll know exactly what I mean, guys, as soon as you see it. I hope this hasn't happened. I hope this is not a new dimension to this conflict. And if it is, guys, I really don't know what to say about it, guys, because it's just going to be absolutely insane. Remember, Ukraine, they're continuing all the time to, strike Russian air defences, as a prelim for these F-16s. Remember what I said, guys, all right? I don't think these F-16s are ever going to be flown from Ukraine. And also the Ukrainians are targeting the energy sector. The energy sector is always, it's always going to be a target because everybody needs energy. The Ukrainians, they've had their energy sector almost decimated by the Russian glide munitions. Also, guys, I want to read this because I want to put this into context. Oh, it's moved. Hang on. Oh, there it is. Right, okay, I'm going to put the links to all these in the description, guys. What I will say is this is a living document, what I'm talking about, so it updates every now and again. I'm talking about this article I'm going to read. It's a comment, and it was from 0330. That's on the app. Putin relying on the world's 198th ranked economy is pathetic. So let me just read this and give you some context. A former CIA analyst has branded Vladimir Putin's trip to North Korea as pretty pathetic. The Russian president has had the red carpet treatment in North Korea as he holds talks with the leader Kim Jong-un. One of the key outcomes of the trip is a new agreement signed between the two nations that vow to protect each other in the event of an invasion. I don't see anything pathetic there, guys, all right? Absolutely nothing. For Sue Mi Terry, I think that's her name, Sue Mi Terry, a former CIA analyst who is now a director at the Wilson Center think tank. I always question think tanks and where the funding is coming from. Mr. Putin's visit to North Korea highlights how two pariah states are cementing their ties despite their isolation from the international community. I don't see Russia at all being isolated. You can argue North Korea. I don't see Russia being isolated from the international community. Russia are a founding member of the BRICS nations. More and more nations are queuing up to join the BRICS alliance. So I don't see that this has got, that these statements. I don't know what the woman who's made this. It's obvious propaganda, guys. All right, but you've just got to. you've got to look at what she's saying and put it into context, because they put these things out on mainstream media and people read them, and then if you don't really know that much about it, you read the article and you think, what are the key words? Pathetic, pariah, isolated, which is just not the case. I think it's pretty pathetic that Putin has to resort to relying on the 198th ranked economy in the world to help his war effort, she told the BBC News. It's all around bad news for the rest of the world. You see, that's an oxymoronical statement. It makes no sense. Let me read it to you again and tell you why. I think it's pretty pathetic that Putin has to resort to relying on the 198th ranked economy to help his war effort. It's bad news for the rest of the world. How is it bad news? If what she's saying is true, that it's pathetic, that means it's ridiculous, you know. Why is it bad news for the rest of the world? If that's Putin's last resort, why is it bad news for the rest of the world? It should be insignificant news for the rest of the world, because it's a non-story. But the reality is, you know, let me think of an example. Remember when China was an emerging economy? You know, and I think I'm thinking off the top of my head here, guys. I think it was one of the sports brands. I think it was like Adidas or something. They first moved over to China, and they got, you know, and they could get their stuff produced at a ridiculously cheap cost in comparison to all the other companies. Then what you saw is Adidas, or I think it was Adidas, I may be wrong, guys, but it was definitely one of the sports brands. They were the first to move into China in a big way and invest in factories. And what happened was, their profit margin was so big, they could afford to, you know, have sales, have cuts, you know, and they just saturated the market, and they became a huge, you know, they became a huge player because they saw that opportunity in an emerging market, in an emerging nation. Now, if Vladimir Putin's doing this to an emerging nation in the arms industry, in the defense industry, it's actually a really smart move, because he will get stuff produced cheaper, faster, and potentially at the same quality, if, like what we just spoke about, they're giving them technological expertise, then anyone else can do it, guys. So what you could really say is, this woman is saying Putin's pathetic for getting his weapons cheaper, faster, and in larger quantities. Makes no sense. It's absolute bilge water, guys, and it makes no sense whatsoever. Anyway, guys, that's my little analysis for this afternoon. I'm going to go and get some chicken wings. I'm going to come back. I'm going to do you guys another video, and then I am going to the gym. So I'm going to mag to grid for now.